everybody. Well, nothing kills your appetite like knowing that right after you enjoyed that fantastic meal, your stomach is going to make you pay for it. If you're suffering from discomfort after you eat, my next guest says you may have a food intolerance. Please say hello to pharmacist and author Sherry Torkos. How you doing, Sherry?
Hi, thank you.
And we're both very passionate about this topic, but even before we get into it, what is a food intolerance?
Well, food intolerance is basically an inability to digest a certain component of food. The most common food intolerances are gluten and dairy, or lactose intolerance.
Right. And then what would be the difference between like an intolerance or an allergy?
Well, in an allergy situation, your body is reacting to what we call an allergen, and it causes an immune system response, and it can actually be deadly.
Okay.
For example, people that have seafood allergies, peanut allergies, sometimes even a small amount of that food can elicit a very strong reaction. They can get anaphylactic, where their throat closes off, and even die. Whereas a food intolerance can make you very miserable. You can get a lot of horrible symptoms, but you're not going to be in immediate danger of death, whereas an allergy can be very serious.
Not an immediate, but an intolerance could build up to
Over
something.
time, there are some risks that actually could increase your risk of death.
Right. And how, like, food intolerances, I mean, they're very common, aren't they?
They are. It's funny, you know, we were talking earlier, when I was a child, I don't know anybody in my class that had an allergy or an intolerance.
Never.
No,
Oh, no.
We ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and people drank their milk.
Oh,
no
and I had an upset stomach. My mother would, here, big glass of milk, you know, it'll settle your stomach.
That's right, the best thing. And it could actually be a problem for you if you have lactose intolerance. In fact, lactose intolerance affects an estimated 40% of North Americans, but it's higher in certain populations. For example, in the Asian population, it's estimated that almost 100% of people have varying degrees of lactose intolerance.
Really?
With celiac disease, which is a gluten intolerance, it affects 1 in 100 people. And when I was diagnosed with celiac, which was 23 years ago, they thought the incidence was 1 in 5,000. So it went from 1 in 5,000, now 1 in 100. Very, very common. Okay, so let's go to the lactose one first. Okay, so lactose intolerance. Like, what is lactose intolerance? Okay, well, lactose is basically the sugar component of milk. So if you have a lactose intolerance, you can't digest that sugar, the milk sugar. So what ends up happening is it passes down through your intestine undigested, gets to the colon, and it's not too happy there. Bacteria feed on it, produce gas, and that leads to the classic symptoms of gas, bloated stomach, diarrhea, and it can make you really miserable. So basically with the lactose intolerance, you're missing the enzyme, or you don't have enough of the enzyme to digest the lactose.
Right, okay, and if you have this, so how would you, I guess you would know you'd have that if you drink milk or anything with dairy.
You know, but the thing is, lactose is not just in the obvious milk. If you have instant potatoes, if you have energy bars, even pharmaceuticals, 20% of pharmaceuticals have lactose, some over-the-counter products. It's in a lot of processed and prepared foods, and sometimes people eat things and they don't really know what's upsetting them.
Yeah, okay, so if you don't know, then how do you get diagnosed with the lactose intolerance?
Well, you can actually go and have tests done. You can do an elimination diet, or you can have a hydrogen breath test done, and that's actually one of the easiest ways to diagnose it, where they take samples of your breath and they measure the amount of hydrogen, because the bacteria that feed on the undigested lactose produce this hydrogen gas. Or you could do stool tests, but most people aren't too into having the stool tests done.
We'll do the other ones.
The other one's a lot easier to deal with.
Okay, so if you feel you have this, then certainly you should go and be tested.
Absolutely, go to your doctor and get tested.
Okay, and there obviously are a lot of things on the market if you have lactose intolerance, you know, substitutes.
That's right, substitutes. There are enzyme tablets. I brought some today. There are different brands of enzyme tablets that you can take before you're having dairy. Say if you want to have a piece of cheese or a glass of milk. You can also buy certain types of milk that already contain the lactase enzyme. And you can have alternative milk, such as rice milk, almond milk, hemp milk, which are really quite good. So there are more options. Soy milk, exactly.
Okay. Wonderful. Now, the next one is, and this one is one that we all know, both of us, gluten. Okay, so what is a gluten intolerance?
Well, gluten is a protein that's in wheat, rye, barley, and some of the other grains. And it's a very complex protein molecule that's very difficult to digest. And people that cannot digest gluten have a condition called celiac disease, where they eat something that contains gluten, it causes damage to the intestine, actually destroys the absorptive surface of the intestine. So what that results in is your inability to digest and absorb nutrients into your body. So over time, you can actually become malnourished, anemic, you can have gastrointestinal issues like lactose. You can get diarrhea, constipation, bloating, gas, but it can have some very far-reaching effects. Undiagnosed, it can lead to risk of cancer, intestinal cancer, risk of infertility. It can affect children and cause developmental delays, and even behavioral problems.
Wow. Okay. So then, how do we know that if we have a gluten intolerance? I mean, it's because it's a really weird thing. There's gluten kind of in everything.
Gluten is in everything.
Yeah.
I found that out when I was diagnosed, and I was like, what do you mean I can't eat all these things that I love? Because you're talking, you know, pizza, burgers. When I was a teenager, I wasn't quite the health-conscious eater that I am today. You can get tested. There's a new test kit. This is the test kit here. It's called the BioCard Celiac Test Kit.
Okay.
And it tests for the presence of an antibody to gluten. So it's a simple finger prick test. You get a drop of blood, you put it on a test strip, similar to how you would read a pregnancy test. If you have one line, it's negative, 2 lines, it's positive. You can also get your doctor to give you a requisition for a blood test, but it's not covered under a lot of the provincial drug plans.
Right.
This BioCard test kit's only $50 in the pharmacy. If you have to pay for it in the lab, it's about $100 to $150.
Okay.
And if it's positive, you need to follow it up with a biopsy of the small intestine.
Oh, really? Okay. Just
In order to definitively diagnose it.
Exactly right. Now, and how do we know if we have, say, a gluten intolerance? Like, what would be our symptoms?
Well, it could be gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea. Some people have skin rash, difficulty concentrating. They notice some subtle symptoms of fatigue, malaise. Some women don't notice it until they're trying to conceive and they're unable to do so.
Yeah.
And then they find out that they had celiac disease because it's impaired nutrient absorption, causes deficiencies, which basically affect all aspects of your health.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and even for me, I mean, you know, when I went off the whole gluten thing, my energy level went up, and you know, you don't have that bloating and
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, before I was diagnosed, my skin was covered with eczema. My hair didn't grow for 3 years. I thought at the time it was great. I never had to get haircuts. My hair didn't grow. No big deal. I'm saving some money. But then I developed all these really bad stomach symptoms that made me housebound.
Wow. And
So it was once I was diagnosed, went on the gluten-free diet, took vitamin supplements, restored my health, and you know, it was just amazing how much better.
And there are a lot of alternatives to food, you know, would be snack foods and things of that
Absolutely. I brought some of my favorites. These are snack bars by Enjoy Life. What's nice about them is they're free of all the common allergens. So they don't contain any wheat or gluten. They don't contain dairy, nuts, any of the common allergens or intolerances that people have. They have energy bars. They have granola. They have cookies. They're all really good.
And these things here, I have a gazillion of them, you know, because they're great.
They're really tasty. And this is a macaroni and cheese. So if you have a child, like a lot of kids love macaroni and cheese, and if they're told they can't have it, they feel deprived.
Yeah.
Well, there are actually forms of macaroni and cheese that are gluten-free, and some are lactose-free as well. So kids don't have to be deprived. Adults don't have to be deprived.
Exactly. And there's another one here. You had the supplement, which is great. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, this is really new. It's actually very new to Canada. It's called Gluten Defense. And the idea with this is you take it before a potentially dangerous meal. So if you have celiac and gluten intolerance, eating out can be challenging because there are hidden sources of gluten, cross-contamination. So if you take this enzyme before, it helps to lessen the potential damage. If you do get a little bit of gluten, you may not become as sick. Helps to digest the gluten and the other components,
if you
casein.
think in any way, shape, or form you have any of these intolerances, you really should consult your physician, yes?
Absolutely, because it could be a gluten or lactose intolerance, but it could also be irritable bowel, Crohn's, colitis. There are so many diseases that have similar symptoms, and that's what makes sometimes the diagnosis challenging. But really make sure you work with your doctor to get to the bottom of it so that you can feel better, you have energy, and you don't have these symptoms.
Exactly, yeah. Just don't cut out of your diet and take supplements.
Well, the problem with doing an elimination diet or cutting it out, you never know 100% unless you have the proper testing done whether or not you did have gluten or lactose or any other issue.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, great information, don't you think, guys? Thank you very much. We've got to head out. Thank you. And we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.